When a government begins to barter away sovereignty in the shadows, especially the sovereignty of its own territorial waters, it ought to send alarm bells ringing through every corner of a nation. There is a stench of betrayal in the air, and it emanates not just from Westminster, but from the quiet corridors of Brussels where British interests are, once again, being carved up like mackerel on a fishmonger's slab. The whispers of a fish-for-defense deal between Labour's government and the European Union are not just diplomatically tone-deaf, they are strategically absurd and politically indefensible. To trade away British waters for a stake in a €150 billion EU defence initiative is to fundamentally misunderstand the nature of Brexit, of sovereignty, and of the responsibilities entrusted to any British government. It is an inversion of national interest. Fishing may not be the largest sector of the economy in raw numbers, but that fact is irrelevant to the principle at stake. Fishing rights were one of the symbolic battlegrounds of the referendum, and they remain a visceral representation of self-determination. To hand back control of those waters under the table, while basking in the illusion of defence cooperation, is to spit on the very promises that brought Britain out of the European Union. Let's be absolutely clear. Britain does not need to trade its fish to buy influence in Europe's defence ambitions. The UK is already one of NATO's leading contributors, possessing world-class intelligence, nuclear deterrent capabilities, and a formidable military-industrial complex. The notion that Britain must now grovel for inclusion in a Franco-German-led defence fund by surrendering access to its own maritime resources is insulting. It reduces our strategic weight to that of a supplicant state, one that exchanges sovereignty for the illusion of partnership. That is not leadership. It's subservience, neatly dressed in the language of pragmatism. This government must not be allowed to dress betrayal as diplomacy. Sir Keir Starmer's alleged willingness to compromise on fishing rights to buy favour in Brussels is not compromise, it is cowardice. It's a decision made not out of necessity, but out of political convenience and a desperate desire to re-ingratiate the UK with institutions from which we unshackled ourselves by democratic mandate. And worse still, it sends a message that no Brexit principle is sacred, and that under Labour, everything, yes, everything, is on the negotiating table again. The usual suspect will argue this is all justified by the potential economic benefit of British firms bidding for defence contracts under the EU umbrella. But let us not confuse access with influence. Any arrangement that ties British defence industries to Brussels will come with strings, and likely red tape, shared decision-making, and pressure to align with European strategic goals. Are we to believe for 1 second that France or Germany will see control of their defence agenda just because British firms might win a tender or two? This is not a deal. It is a delusion. Moreover, we must remember who we are dealing with. France, backed by Denmark and others, has pushed this fish-for-defence quid pro quo with brazen cynicism, exploiting an expiring fishing agreement to wedge Britain back into a subordinate position. It is a calculated move designed not to build trust but to extract concessions. And Starmer's government appears poised to reward that strategy, mistaking it for diplomacy. In doing so, they would not only betray our fishermen and coastal communities, many of whom voted for Brexit in good faith, but also degrade our standing as a sovereign power. The goal of Labour's positioning becomes even more jarring when one considers the geopolitical context. While Europe scrambles to rearm, it is Britain that remains on the front foot, supplying arms to Ukraine, leading NATO initiatives, and demonstrating commitment to the collective security of the continent. Our role in European defence is already established, built not on EU dependency, but on resolve, capacity, and historical leadership. We need not buy a seat at the table. We built the table. That fact should be the cornerstone of any future partnership, not bartered away for the sake of bureaucratic inclusion. In a time when strategic clarity should be paramount, Labour's drift into Brussels orbit signals confusion, weakness, and a dangerous willingness to rewrite the terms of our national sovereignty. If this government signs away Britain's waters, it will not be seen as a smart trade or diplomatic breakthrough. It will be seen for what it is, a betrayal of coastal communities, a misreading of Brexit, and an unforgivable squandering of hard-won sovereignty. The government must walk away from any deal that trades our territorial integrity for continental approval. Let the EU keep its defence fund if the price is our dignity. British security, British industry, and British waters are not bargaining chips. They are national assets, and no Prime Minister should forget who they belong to.